And a bullwhip's not Australian for one. Difference between the two, the bullwhip is plaited from the bottom of that handle, plaited right the way through in one long continual plait. There's no join there whatsoever. Our Australian stock whip, our design, what makes it unique to Australia is we make the whip in two separate parts, make the handle completely separate. Early days, they used to call that handle the stock, a little bit like the stock of a gun. Join the whip at the top of the handle, and the correct name for the whip part itself is called the thong. But when you put the whip onto the stock, that's how we actually get the name Stockwhip. Not because we use it around livestock and that sort of thing, which is a very popular belief. Now, you need to put the stock whip and the stock horse together, because horses typically do not like a whip that is cracking or sitting on their back. Alright, have a look at how close that cracks into the horse's eyes, ears, nose, all those sensitive areas on the horse. He's got to trust me that the whip's not going to hurt him in any way, shape or form. We'll show you how much trust we can gain with the horse a little bit later on. An older horse, we'll go through that a little bit. But mate's going pretty good. He's going in the right direction, isn't he? So he's going along pretty good. Now, when you see a stockman riding on a horse, cracking a whip like that, the correct term for that is called a cattleman's crack. Every crack of the whip has a different name, you know. So we have flicks like that. That's what we call a flick. So sometimes you can have a flick that goes over like that. But a traditional stockman's crack or cattleman's crack looks like that. It goes down beside the horse's body. That's what your cattleman's crack looks like. Don't get it confused with the plumber's crack though, will you? Oh, there you go. You'll get the hang of it as we go. Right. I'm going to share with you a poem that we wrote about the stock whip. Now, this is the first poem I've ever written, but it's a beauty in the sense that it tells the whole story about how a whip is made, what they're made from, how they work, why we use them, where we use them. It goes through the whole ins and outs of a stock whip. So I had to give it a really unique and original title. So I ended up calling it the Australian Stock Whip. There's something about that sound that'll stir you up inside. It's that crack. An Australian stock whip, made best from kangaroo hide, and flashing through the air faster than the speed of sound, and breaking back against itself as it's pulled towards the ground. Lying dormant there in a leather side, the craftsman makes his start by cutting the strands with calloused hands. He splits that hide apart in 4 or 8 or 12 or more. Those strands are cut precise, and then they're plaited around the belly before the craftsman's eyes. And then taper as he goes, which gives the whip its drive, and then plait by plait and strand by strand, a stock whip comes alive. Now we bind the handle and we tie the fall. Now the whip's becoming clearer, and we join them both together at that knot they call the keeper. But maybe the most important part is the cracker at the end. He's tied aboard with a sheep fen knot, and you're ready for it to send. For he's the one that does the work on the whip which he is bound, soaring through the air at whistling speeds to break that speed of sound. My father had a stock whip, and his father before that. It's that very thing you reach for after pulling on your hat. And sitting astride a young stock horse with his mate to carry the pack, it opens the day and it wakes the morn with a sharp and a sudden crack. It echoes around the hills or across the rolling plains, and it gets that mob a-moving along the track again. It's a stockman's prized possession. It's a drover's tool of choice. He uses it to keep him moving and to save his weary voice. But in the rugged hands of a stockman, or the soft hands of a boy, it's most important to remember that the stock whip's not a toy. For the power of a stock whip, as it's travelling super fast, can pop an eye or break the skin or cause a real sore arm. So you may hear the whips are cracking wherever you may go, from up the bush mustering or around a country show, but from city or the high country, wherever your path may track, I think there's nothing more Australian than to stand and have a crack. Alright, so that poem does a really good job explaining how a whip actually works, but before we move on, we want to put a bit of emphasis on two key parts of a whip. The cracker on the end. Any whip anywhere in the world, it must have that little cracker on the end. Okay, now calling it a cracker, it's almost a bad name. It's got nothing to do with firecrackers, gunpowder. It is purely just a bit of frayed string tied onto the end of the whip. The science behind the whip itself is the really cool part. That's all to do with that taper. Right, now what that means with the taper, when we put the energy into the whip, the energy rolls down that taper. The same amount of energy goes into a smaller, tighter space as it goes down. So that amplifies that energy, okay, and creates its own speed, or what we call drive. And it will keep generating speed all the way down the whip until it gets to the very point. And when that cracker breaks against itself, it creates a sonic boom and breaks the sound barrier. Okay, it's the first ever man-made object to break the speed of sound. That's about 750 miles per hour, for up to about 1,100 metres per second. Well, if you've ever watched that Channel 9's Married at First Sight show, it's about as fast as the average relationship. Don't worry, as a Stockman, we don't get caught up watching that sort of rubbish on TV. And before anyone asks, I don't watch Farmer Wants Some Strife either. Right, I've got a couple of mates out the back here today that promised to give us a hand in today's show. So we'll nip out the back and we'll see if they're ready to come in. I did have a bit of issues last night. I tried to ring these